Hi, this is Sarah Ann Saran Fox,
And I'm Dan Watanabe.
and we're here with Dan and Take on Hollywood.
Today, we actually have a guest with us. It is Garen Tanilian. He is a student at Cal State Northridge right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to put him on the spot.
Oh.
He's going to talk to us about some of the films he's had to see in school. We're going to give our comments on it, which will be decidedly not probably what he's learned in class. And then we'll be even more mean and throw some titles at him.
Absolutely.
How does that sound?
It sounds awesome.
I'm very excited for this. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Garen, tell us a little bit about what you're studying at CSUN.
I'm studying right now. I'm there to get my BA in media theory and criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's just shorthand for watch a lot of movies and talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. I enjoy it a lot. It's something that I recommend for most film students if they appreciate film and they want to get into film and do a lot with their degree. I would suggest going with that route.
Well, I've got a dirty confession to make, and that is that when I went to USC way back while I was being chased by the dinosaurs, I was a history crit major, and history crit is the equivalent of what you're doing. And I'm going to put a little word out there for that particular side of the degree. And it's actually the best way in to getting an executive position. Now, if you don't want to be an executive, you want to be a director, it's absolutely wrong. But if you ever have ambitions to be a producer or a development exec or someone in the front office, it is the best pathway. And
Why is that?
The reason it's the best pathway is that it forces you to learn a lot of movies and TV titles and history and trends and what's happened in the past and what it presents you with. And even though you don't realize it at the time, is a sense of how much this stuff repeats. So you can actually look at something that's happening and going, I bet you this is going to be the next trend. And more often than not, you will be absolutely correct.
And it also gives you a film vocabulary so that when you're talking about film with writers and other producers, you have a wealth of knowledge to draw upon. And that when you're helping to develop a script, you have a deep knowledge of structure and story and upon which that you can call upon.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I agree with you, Dan, and I also want to add, I think it's really good for people who want to be writers and directors because of the fact that for me, when I was originally going to go for screenwriting, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go in for screenwriting, I'm going to get my degree, and with the option of screenwriting, I was set. And then I thought theory would have been better because, well, one, you're taking about the same classes, but the other thing was that you're forced to watch films that you probably will never see in your lifetime by your choice, especially for someone my age who, any film before 1975 is not necessarily that accessible, or even in your knowledge in pop culture. So it's really good way to sit you down in a theater, and which is really awesome that the CSUN theater the Omber Theater is a very nice theater, and you could watch these things as if you were supposed to. But
I can really relate to what you're saying. When I was at Brandeis University a million years ago, I took a film class in my senior year. I was for the first time was exposed to Bergman, and also to a film that is one of my favorites, Les Enfants du Paradis, which is the infants of the Children of Paradise, which is a film I recommend to anyone who is a student of film, a lover of film. What I'm hearing from what you're saying, Garen, is if you're one of those people that goes to the movies and comes out and says, it was okay, I liked it, where are we going to eat? That kind of a career is not for them. And we've all met those people. We've all known those people. You need to be the kind of person
to walk out of the theater either screaming of joy or just yelling of what you could have done better.
Yes.
I think that was the way that it's a great way to describe how I got into it. Was I saw Spider-Man 3, and I remember walking out of the theater with my dad screaming as a 12-year-old too, and saying that was a piece of garbage. They're a nice way of saying it, and that I could have done it better. And then that was the moment where my dad was kind of maybe you should. And then it kind of sparked my way through high school, thinking maybe I could do this as a career.
So Spider-Man 3 is the movie that ruined you.
Pretty much.
Okay, because it's very important to think about what movies ruined you, because as an executive, as a budding executive, or even as a budding writer, to know what really got to you at an early stage is going to be very informative of where you can go with your career. And most of the time, people are ashamed to admit the movie that really turned them on, or the TV show that really lit them up and made them say, wow, this is a career I wanted to do. So Saran, what movie ruined you?
Citizen Kane, because it's everything is not as it seems. I like the layers in the film. I like the idea that there was a secrets and lies and digging. And in the end, there's a surprise, which is why something like The Sixth Sense really got me. I loved being fooled by that film. Now, I know, Dan, you and I disagree about Citizen Kane, but that's okay. I'm still right for me.
Yes, it's just that most of the time, most people aren't high kara like that, like we say in Japan. High kara meaning that you have something that's true art as opposed to something that's guttural and down low and just fun.
Well, there are fun movies, there are trashy movies we all love, but the movie that ruined me, that got me into really, I always was writing. I was writing from the time I was a little girl. It's something that seemed, I was 13 years old, and that's when the world's really like opening up to you. You're still a child, but you're starting to become more of an adult. And that just was a sign to me that there was so much out in the world that I didn't know about, that I wanted to know about. I wanted to understand this. So I'm going to have to think about the trashy movie that ruined me. In the meantime, Darren?
Yes.
Let's talk about one of the movies that you've seen in your classes at CSUN that has really kind of woken you up in the middle of the night, that you've talked about for hours with other students.
Well, I mean, the thing that I love about film school now, and especially in theory, is that you get to watch all these films, and a lot of the films that I've been watching recently are the films that kind of blur the line between like realism and formalism and all that, and all that jargon. But basically, to dumb it down would be what you can't tell what's real, or you don't, or it plays with the idea of things like time and space and gravity and like things that you would think are very normal, but they're not in this kind of way, and that's what makes it art, quote unquote, whatever you define as art. But one of these films that I saw was a film called The Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, and it was an episode, I believe, of the Twilight Zone. There was a special of the Twilight Zone, and it was based on a book or a short story called An Occurrence on Owl Creek Bridge
by Ambrose Bierce.
Yes, and I remember watching that, and it was about a man who's about to be executed, and it takes place in the 1800s.
Civil War.
Civil War.
Yeah,
okay,
Civil
so
War.
it was a Civil War piece, and it was about to be executed, about to be hung off a bridge, and it displayed this story about how this man escaped from being hung and is running away from the people that are trying to kill him. But it has a twist in the end, and if you want to watch it. I recommend it very much so, and you can find it online. It was really easy for me to find it because we couldn't finish the whole film in class, so we had to go home and watch it. And I was like, oh, how am I going to find this without going to get the DVD? And it was boom, really easy. I just went online and looked it up. It was there.
1962, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was like...
Well, it's also, his getting caught is based upon a lie.
Yeah. He's
told by someone who's pretending to be a Southerner that they can go to a bridge and blow it up or something. He's pretending to be a Northerner, and it's one of the other, but he's lied to, and he shows up at a certain place and he's caught, and then they're about to hang him.
Yeah.
So I like films that are based upon secrets and lies.
The way it was really interesting because the way they started it was they kind of cut that whole backstory out because it starts right when he's about to be hung.
Yes.
So like it started like, if you've read it, what's about to happen, but the whole piece of the point of the film was less about the context of why he's about to be hung, but more of the escape.
Yes, the escape and the dual reality that he exists in.
Yes, it was creepy. I mean, I found it very odd, especially in the way it was edited too was for being 1962. Like, and I don't mean that anything was bad then. I'm just saying that like the way technology's progressed and everything, and you look at then and now, and you could kind of see, oh, okay, like we progressed a little bit, but even then, I was like the way it was the execution and the way they cut certain scenes and certain images was very profound. It's
also about a man. I think that when we see films where, like Dead Man Walking
Yeah.
and something like this, where, we don't know when we're going to die, and people who are driving and get killed in an accident don't know. But these people who are about to be executed, they know that they're going to die. And we wonder what that's like. And we are so grateful we're not in it. At the same time, as a feeling of horror watching a character who knows they're going to die within the next 5 minutes. And so when he exists in this reality, we can also relate to it. And we don't want to give the ending away, but it's an awesome
It's a very
movie.
awesome
It's
film. I
50
totally
years
recommend
ago. It's okay to give a spoiler.
I mean, I kind of feel bad because I want to. I mean, for the sake of the discussion, it would be great, but I want people to watch it. I want people to kind of be interested and.
We need to make an executive decision here.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll give a semi-spoiler.
Okay.
So that it won't give away the ending of this
Okay.
movie, but there's another movie I'm going to recommend that you take a look at.
Yes.
And that movie is Carnival of Souls. And Carnival of Souls was a movie that cost nothing to make.
Who made it?
I don't remember.
Is
off
it
the
an
top of my
American
head.
film?
It's an American film. And it was a really low budget film. And it became a cult classic because of its constant repetition on television, because it was in one of the cheap movie packages of that era that were horror movies. And it's gotten this incredible reputation now, but it has that same mystical feeling, that same otherworldly, what is wrong with what this person is seeing. It led to other remakes such as Jacob's Ladder and pictures like that. But Carnival of Souls is unique for someone who's thinking of getting into the business because it's a feature. It's a feature that had no reason to last, and yet it's become a classic. It's become one that's taught in schools.
Because of the themes. Because of the themes. I hate to use this expression because it's overused, but the universal themes. And I've thought of two movies that ruined me. They're not trashy movies, but they're not considered in the same class with Citizen Kane. They're both Natalie Wood movies. One was Splendor in the Grass and Love with the Proper Stranger, which has a very high romantic version of love, very unrealistic version of love, except for the ending of Splendor in the Grass, where reality smacks Natalie Wood in the face. And we both know that she's really moved on. They both really moved on.
I think I've seen Splendor in the Grass.
And it's very romantic. And that scene in the classroom where she's asked to say the Wordsworth poem and she breaks down. I mean, she's the best at hysteria. I'm still pure, mama, when she's in the bathtub. And then, of course, Love with the Proper Stranger, because in real life, these two people should never have gotten together, would never have gotten together. It has a very highly dramatic scene where she goes to get an abortion, and it's so romantic. And what he does, what Steve McQueen does, it had these two incredible movie stars. And so for a young girl watching these movies, this is like, oh, just tell me about love. Oh yeah, I'm live with my parents who are in a real marriage, but to heck with what I see there. Let me impose upon myself this ridiculous idea of what love really is.
Well, here's what was nice in a way about the production code, because the production code insisted that people acted in a way that was almost unrealistically pure. But because of that, you have the real emotion that comes out of having your heart broken, of being in love with someone so desperately, and yet not being able to really get together with them. Today, with hookup culture, from the time kids are, and I might be wrong about this, but I'm going to leave this to Garin to tell me. But I'm assuming that today, for kids, the whole idea of not being able to have sex because it was a sin, because it was wrong, because you could have a kid and have to go away for 9 months to visit your aunt, and then come back and then your parents will adopt a baby all of a sudden. You don't have those dynamics. So
what you're saying is when there are limits, then very often when there are limits, we can create art.
Not only that, but the emotion.
But the emotion,
the emotion of being thwarted in love. It's Romeo and Juliet.
Absolutely. Now today you can get an abortion easily. It isn't a big deal for people. You can live with someone if you want to and pretend, play house with someone.
Right.
And in those days, there were limitations on that. There were taboos on all of that. So filmmakers had to find a way to have us connect to characters and their limitations and to kind of identify with that.
Yeah, I think that was and I think the reason those films were better, like not better necessarily, but the strengths that they had were their strength in subtext, was that because they were like you both said, because they were forced to be in this box where they can't say certain things or talk about certain subjects, they would have to like imply it in a very like subtle way. I think I love that, and I love that in those films. But and you hit the nail on the head a little bit, Dan, about like the way hookup culture is, and just because it's not like, I think people kids my age were not like, and I'm 21 years old, by the way, and I think that a lot of people my age we don't think about that as often anymore, and if we do, it's because our parents told us this. But like I never grew up with that in my head about the idea of sex being wrong or being a bad thing, or like and I knew that these things, or even like the idea of abortion or even murder, like I knew, like, and I went to Christian school, by the way. This is just the way I was raised at home. Where,
well, speaking of sex, excuse me, but I think we need to get to carnal knowledge.
Yes,
you brought up a really good topic.
and I think that's a great segue to that, because it ties into that. When I watched that movie, and that movie came out in 1970, and I remember watching it and going like, my God, like this, like it felt like it could have been made today.
Yes.
And in terms of subject matter, and it was very like, wow.
But there were limitations on sex in that film. In the beginning of the film, of can you touch my breast? And having sex was a very big deal. Getting to the point where you were in bed with a man or a woman was a very, very big deal at the time. It's a very the thing when I was like, rereading the synopsis, because I saw it many years ago and I've seen it several times, is how nihilistic it is. It's Jules Feiffer, and it's a very, very written by Jules Feiffer, directed by Mike Nichols, and it's got a very nihilistic view of love and sex and relations between men and women. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It's very strange because, okay, so like the plot of the film is basically about two young men played by Art Garfunkel and Jack Nicholson, and their lives growing up from college to adulthood, and what their sexual relations were like throughout that whole time. And it's very strange because I in the beginning I was watching it and thinking like, oh, okay, like, because I didn't know where it was going, and I was like thinking, oh, okay, like, so these guys are in college. This is going to be a college story about these two friends, how one of them is in love. They have pillow talk about sex, and like, oh yeah, I want to do this with that girl and this with that girl, and one of them falls in love with the girl, but the other one is also trying to get with that girl as well. And they're
Candice Bergen, by the way.
And they're playing, they're doing like a love triangle. And I thought that was going to be the plot of the film. And I said, oh, okay, one of these. And I was just like, in the beginning, I was just kind of turned off by that. But as the film was progressing, I noticed, like, I'm like, okay, wait a minute, they're in a different time now. Okay, wait, so they're older? Like, what happened with that whole thing? And then I soon started to realize that this isn't a film about like, doesn't have one singular kind of story about like these main characters, like a bunch of characters in the same room. It's about these two guys going through life and going through all these different relationships that they go through.
And what it meant for me was these were two men who, when they got what they wanted, because Art Garfunkel's character Sandy marries the girl who's in the love triangle with Candice Bergen, the beautiful non-Jewish Candice Bergen, because he's a Jewish man. And he gets bored with her and bored with suburban life. And Jack Nicholson gets Anne Margaret and lives with her, and tells her she doesn't have to work, he'll support her, and then screams at her when she tells him that she's bored, that she should get a job. And then he winds up being this, they're both very nihilistic characters, in that they get what they want and then they don't want it. It doesn't satisfy them. Yep. And you have a sense that they're going to go through life just going after one thing and another, and then finding out it isn't going to satisfy them or bring them any peace or happiness. It's like the ultimate movie, the ultimate argument for, happiness is an inside job. Absolutely. What about you, Dan? What do you think about carnal knowledge?
Carnal knowledge I find to be fascinating. I first saw it when I was in high school, so most of it went right over my head, at least in terms of the sophistication. Although, Anne Margaret running around naked for somebody who had really loved her and Bye Bye Birdie was definitely a big plus to watching the film. But one of the things that I've gotten from it as I've gotten older is you look at how sad these men's lives became. And it's because all they based their self-worth on was having sex. That's it.
And the chase.
Yes.
The chase. He got Anne Margaret, this beautiful, voluptuous young woman who turned out to be unhappy and unfulfilled. And Art Garfunkel won Candice Bergen, who was the epitome of the girl that they both wanted. And he goes to the suburbs and has children in a marriage, and he's bored. He's bored with her.
And look who he chooses to have as his girlfriend.
Carol Kane.
Yes.
Yep. And the thing that I find funny about that movie was like, in terms of who they are, I think they're both sides of the same kind of Byronic character.
Yes.
Because they both, the thing I noticed after watching it again was the way the story splits, because they were both best friends. They both start off, and I think that was a representation of both. They were the same person, maybe in thematically, and then whenever they both were in love with the same girl, they both wanted to be with the same girl. That's when they start splitting, and you see this. The whole rest of the film is the split in their lives of the different choices they made. Where Art Garfunkel was trying to be the guy who wanted to fall in love, get married, have that kind of idealistic version of love, where Jack Nicholson wanted power and wanted to be in control of that kind of relationship. And like you said, how he just said, stay home, just be my wife, just be there, and I'll do I'll go to work, I'll make all the money, and I just want you to be there for sex, basically. And for a status thing, and that's where they looked at it differently. And then towards the end of the film, you see how far that split comes to.
And in the end, Art Garfunkel is with this young hippie Carol Kane, who's like 19 years old, and he's just trying to recapture his youth. The whole film to me is just about a fruitless chase, that they're chasing things on the outside, women, money, power, and it's all empty for them because they really don't know themselves. And they really they're very selfish, and it's just the pursuit of pleasure, and just one more thing is going to make me happy, or that thing is going to make me happy. So in its nihilistic view, it has its own lesson. That sex for sex sake, or just I want to get it, and that's the thing that's going to make me happy. I think all of us have had the life experience of that. Relationship doesn't make us happy, the job doesn't make us happy. It can bring us many things, but one more time, and it just sounds so corny, but it is an inside job. And these men are like shells in a way. They're shells of people. And in the end, Nicholson has a scene with Rita Moreno, who's a high-class prostitute.
Not even high class.
Not even high class. And she's got that icky apartment with all the velvet and she's got to say, you're the man, you're so powerful, you're strong. And he tells her what to say.
That scene hit me like a truck. And I was like, that was the epitome of like, oh, I see what's going on.
Because he's played by Nicholson, who's so masculine, and he acts so powerfully in the film. That scene with Anne Margaret where he's screaming at her. I mean, it's like every acting class should be watching that film. She got nominated for an Oscar.
Yes, she did.
Supporting for that. Is that in the end we see how weak he is, how weak and almost empty he is.
But think about what else that movie did, and it was one of the pioneers in this. It was assertively, aggressively feminist, as opposed to 30s and 40s movies where you had strong female characters who were proto-feminist. Because look at how the women move in it. You move from Candice Bergen, who is the traditional woman, who's very soft, very compliant, very much an object of desire, and because of that, she gets ignored. You have Anne Margaret, who starts off as the sex kitten, who plays the guys and then is depressed when he's not paying attention to her. And what does she do to him? She takes him for all of his money. And finally, you have Rita Moreno, who does not have any truck with men at all. She is liberated from them. As long as they give her money, she's cool. She'll do whatever they want. That's
a really, really interesting take on it. And I think that many feminists today would not even be able to see that.
I think a lot of feminists today would look at Carnal Knowledge and just go off on it, because from a modern feminist perspective, Carnal Knowledge definitely objectifies women and puts them into positions of not only being sexualized, but also being literal objects. They become possessions.
They become marginalized. Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
I think they're more victimized, though, in a weird way. Like, not like victimized in a tragic kind of way, but it shows like, and I agree that it is a very pro-feminist film, because it showed that less about how the progression of these women became, because I didn't even think about that. That's really great. I just saw, like, when I'm watching it, just showed how weak guys were, like, and it made me relate to it a lot, because at the time when I saw it, I was 19. I was 18, 19 years old, and I was like when you're going to college as a dude, or like you you try to attain some status of like, yeah, I'm gonna go to parties and be cool and girls will like me and all that stuff like this. So you're just carrying over high school, you just don't know it. And when I watched that film, it kind of hit me like a truck, where I was like, these guys were getting everything they wanted, but yet they were still such like pieces of garbage. Like they were terrible people, and like they weren't happy. And I in the beginning I sympathized with Art Garfunkel's character, but then towards the end I sympathized more with Jack Nicholson's character, because I felt like he was less lying to himself than Art Garfunkel's character was, because like being that old and marrying a 19-year-old in the end is kind of like, okay, what are you doing?
Really?
Like you're still trying to chase after that.
I think they both exhibited just this air of desperation as the movie goes on, because they didn't really know who they were and didn't know how to define themselves in the world as real men, taking responsibility and all of that. And also we never see the children. We never see the children he has with Margaret. We never see the children he has with Candice Bergen. And they play a huge role in any marriage when there's consideration of divorce. So we don't even get to see them as fathers.
Yeah.
So they were still college students at the end of this film in a way. They never really matured.
I think they didn't explore that just because of
No, I'm not saying they should have. I'm saying that it was on purpose, I'm sure.
Yeah, that I was gonna agree with
and
you.
this leads us to
Actually, I want to do one more thing on that.
Sure.
Think about who directed it too. It was Mike Nichols. So you're seeing someone who was a stage director, and usually stage directors have a little bit of difficulty with the transition. His first movie is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. His second movie is The Graduate.
Right.
And I believe this was number 3. It's either this or was it Catch-22?
Catch-22. It's about Catch-22 was maybe came out a couple of months before. Catch-22 was like in the summer of 70.
Okay, so it was
around the
Catch-22
same
then
time.
this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so.
That makes sense.
So imagine having a career like that, where where you have that many major films.
Amazing. He was absolutely amazing. This brings us to a film upon which there's great disagreement between Dan and me, and perhaps you and Dan, and that's American Beauty. Speaking of sex, you know, American Beauty. What's your take on American Beauty, Garen?
So I saw it the first time when I was 15, and I hadn't watched it after that again. It was just on TV for whatever reason, and I watched it. I'm like, oh, okay, like I had no context of what that film was. I just thought, okay, Kevin Spacey, whatever. And then years later, I had to rewatch it, and I rewatched it again, and like from an analytical point of view, trying to like pick at it and see what this film is about and what it's trying to tell me from like 2 or 3 sittings of watching back to back. And I liked certain aspects of it. I didn't like certain aspects of it. And
what aspects did you like and what aspects didn't you like?
The thing I loved about the film, I loved the film visually. I liked what it was trying to tell me the entire time without me noticing. Because the thing that's so crazy about cinema is that your eyes see everything, your brain misses the certain things. So like you really see what's going on, but you don't consciously see what's going on until you start paying attention to certain things, like the imagery of the rose. And something that was brought up was the imagery of bars, of like little like jail,
right? And also
bars.
of how he saw Mina Savari's character. We saw her through his eyes, his longing, his obsession with her.
It was like a really weird.
What did you think of the
commentary.
paper bag? Because in American Beauty, there's this whole thing with the plastic bag, and
that was really weird.
What did you think? Because a lot of people think that's really, really pretentious.
That's the thing I was gonna get. My negatives. I was like 2 things I didn't like about the movie. One was the narration. I never like. I'm just, that's personally for me. I don't like narration,
especially from a dead person.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it works, Dan, in Sunset Boulevard, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Like even in Sunset Boulevard, like I don't know. There's some pretentiousness to me. In my my taste on narration, because I don't like the whole like, hey, that's me, there I am. I don't. I find that to be a little, like, writing wise, just a little lazy, but that's just personally how I feel about it. Like, and
so you didn't like the narration,
and I didn't like
the plastic bag. But what problem did you have with the plastic bag? Because there's a lot of argument about that.
I didn't have a problem necessarily with the scene, because I understood around the second time watching it. Like, it clicked to me what that movie represented was the idea of finding beauty within nothingness. And at first it seemed pretentious. At first I was like, that's dumb. And like I remember watching and going like, okay, well, yeah, I get it. Like this kid's kind of weird, and he's just like filming random things and finding beauty in things. But in a weird way to me, what I picked at it was that there's a certain element of film about filmmaking in that movie where I felt like Ricky's character, Ricky, the kid with the camera, he was kind of this literal representation of the director Sam Mendes, who he was just running around with a camera, crappy life, like kind of trying to find meaning through the eyes of a lens.
And he was also responding and reacting to his parents. He was like he didn't want to be anything like either one of his parents, who would have looked at that paper bag and said, throw that thing out. Right.
Yeah.
Or looked at any of the films he might have made and made fun of them or not understood them.
Yeah.
He's also 17 years old. And when you're 17 years old, you're very pretentious about art, about things.
Right.
And so I think that maybe it's less than what people think. You know what I mean?
I also thought it was purposely pretentious too. I thought that's what they were trying to say, like this American beauty, kind of like, because a lot of what the thing you always hear, the first thing you always hear is this movie is a film about how American suburbia is portrayed to be and how it really is underneath all the things. For sure, yeah. If you look on the surface, of course, anybody could watch it once and say that. But if you really dig deep and really deep into this movie, it's about like this sense of confusion and loss of identity and feeling like you're a prison of something. You're in your own self-imposed prisons, because like a lot of what people want to, because the first analysis is the American culture does this to people. If you really go deep into it, it's we allow this quote unquote culture, whatever we say, and we impose this prison up on ourselves.
Yes, and the thing is there are a lot of happy families and fulfilled people in suburbia. It's gotten a very, very bad rap. Dan, I need to hear. Dan is chomping at the bit over there. We can't wait to jump in.
Yeah, okay. Every 20 years or so, Hollywood goes through this period of the Wicked Witch of the West mother, whether it be 1959 and 1960 with Imitation of Life and Psycho, or 1980 with Kramer versus Kramer and Ordinary People. This was another manifestation of it, where it's all the wife's fault. She's terrible. She's awful. But if you look at it from the perspective of being Annette Bening, I think she's a great heroine, because here she is. She's got a husband who's going crackers. She's feeling like she has to keep the family together, because they're going to lose the house. They're going to lose everything they've got, because her husband is choosing this particular moment to regress into childhood. And in the process of doing that, she is constantly made fun of. She's made fun of because she's a realtor and she takes her job seriously. And she almost has an affair, or she does have an affair with that guy who's really slick.
Peter Gallagher,
So she is taken advantage of yet again. And yet she's not positioned as someone we should feel sorry for. She's positioned as someone we should laugh at.
I absolutely agree with you. I could understand her. And at the same, I knew that she played her part in the difficult marriage. You know, two people, they were like ships in the night passing. They couldn't, something they once had, they had lost. And that's indicated a number of times. There was something once passionate and real between them, but life interfered. His regression is not admirable. His going to work at that fast food place is not admirable. He needed to buck up and find another job. He was just rebelling he was just being a spoiled brat. He really was. He has a moment in the end. And then he starts smoking grass with a 17-year-old, with his daughter's boyfriend. And so it isn't admirable. Of course, it's Kevin Spacey, so he's always interesting. It doesn't mean it's admirable, but he's always interesting to watch. The ending, in that moment where he shows sympathy for Chris Cooper's character, that's where he redeems himself. That's where he becomes a man. He's relating to this other person. Now, in the end, Chris Cooper comes back and does he kiss him?
Yeah.
He kisses him. Okay. So we have the trope of the military man who's really gay, which really annoyed me no end, but okay, I'll believe it. Then he's so horrified, and if you haven't seen this movie, well, close your ears or go see it.
Spoiler, yeah.
Yeah, he goes.
It's almost 20 years ago.
I know. Chris Cooper goes, And then he brings a gun. He can't stand it. He's so ashamed. He shoots Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey is having a moment. Maybe Lester now is going to grow up. Maybe, you know, his redemption. He hasn't touched that young girl. He does have a moment of redemption in that kitchen. And that's very powerful, powerful, because he's been obsessed with his daughter's beautiful young friend. And then I always thought, and I want to hear your thoughts, that if I'd been in the story conference developing the script, I said, the wife sees it, she shoots Lester. Because her husband is all she's got, even though her life is miserable. I would have had Allison Janney shoot Lester. What? And you said there was an original ending. Am I close or what?
No, I thought you were, because the original ending was that, from what I know, the original ending of that film was supposed to be, from when it was written, was that Lester, I think the Ricky, either Ricky kills Lester or Chris Cooper's character kills Lester, but the ending is that Ricky and the daughter, they're together, they get blamed for it and they go to jail.
Oh dear.
And now that was the thing, it was like that the original ending was that those tapes that you see was supposed to be zoomed out, and you find out that those were the tapes that were playing in evidence against Ricky to the jury, saying that he's a psychopath.
Oh my God, that's that's another movie.
They took that completely out.
That's another movie.
Which is good they took that out.
That's the James M. Cain movie with Lana Turner and
Postman Always Rings Twice.
That's Postman Always Rings Twice. It's a totally a different movie, and I'm glad they didn't do it. But I'm posing, and anybody who's listening to this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. If you've seen the movie recently or you have your own ideas, I would have argued and jumped on a table in that story conference saying, I want Allison Janney to kill him because everything in her life now is at stake, and now her husband is gay. Oh my God, her life, he's going to be even more distant from me. So I thought that made much more sense. But what other, so that was your main problem with it, that the Annette Bening's portrayal of her character?
Remember, in my motto to my students is, if you have to live from hand to mouth, you better be ambidextrous. So part of my being ambidextrous and having a showbiz job and working for the school districts and all of that is that I don't want to be economically terrorized. So I have a real estate license. And there is nothing that Annette Bening does that is remotely accurate in the world of real estate. And I know that's unfair, but whoever said I was fair.
But it bugs you. No, when you're an expert on something and you see it done wrong, even if it's for the sake of art, it'll drive you crazy. It's like if you're a military person and you go and they stretch the truth or do something, you're not watching the movie anymore. It's really, and then you have this huge resentment. You can't really enjoy it.
Now, I would have to go on and say I disagree with both of you on how I perceive Annette Bening's character. Even from the initial viewing, I never saw her as like in any negative light. I viewed her as one of the people suffering from this problem that everybody was suffering from. The difference was, to me, like it was less about Kevin Spacey's character and more about their marriage, because again, I'm going to say this word a lot, thematically, what is one of the most sacred things about American culture in general is the sanctity of marriage. Now, this was a thing to me when I didn't watch as Kevin Spacey as the main character. I watched their marriage as the main character. I saw it as these two people who were, you could tell they had such a good, like they were happy young people who were full of life and full of joy, and like then they got the joy sucked out of them. Now the problem is that one of them is retreating back to that time where you felt most happy, while the other one is trying to maintain the family and trying to maintain control. And I found sympathy in that, because it wasn't like in a negative light, we're saying like, oh, why is she trying to keep him down? Why is she trying to like that's not a good way of looking at it. The way of looking at it is that this chick has had all of her, she sees that her husband is being happy, just quit his job with his full year's salary, like because he blackmailed his boss, and then is going home and does whatever he wants, and she's stuck like, what the heck? Why couldn't I do that? Well, and that's why she buys the gun. That's why she sleeps with the other real estate agent. That's her form of gaining control of her life.
Yes, I was just going to say, she sees him out of control. So when you have a partner who's out of control, you start to try and control more and more. And then, of course, in the end, everything is out of control. which leads us to Network.
Yes. Oh God, one of my all-time favorites.
Oh,
like top 5 at least.
Garen has a big smile on his face.
I love this movie. It was the first time I saw it. It blew me away. Like it was frightening at this, like the most frightening black comedy I've ever seen in my life.
And it was prescient. Patty Chayefsky was a fortune teller, because when you watch this movie, which went in 1975 or 76 when it came out, and it had all these crazy TV shows with terrorists and basically reality shows, everybody laughed because it was science fiction in a way. And now it's like 20 times, it's true 20 times, exponentially 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
The most horrifying moment of it is when you see them take the Patty Hearst story and kind of play it as the basis for a show. And then we think about how not that long, not 20 years later, you had the O.J. Simpson thing where that came true, where you had television being created as a ratings getter around a murder.
Yeah.
So it predicted a lot. It also was a role model in a weird, twisted way. Faye Dunaway's character in that, who's portrayed as a villain, became a role model for a lot of women who got into show business, most particularly Jamie Tarsis,
right,
who was in charge of ABC for a minute after Disney bought it. And she did everything Faye Dunaway did in that movie in real life. And it's almost... It's creepy the way that movie predicted so much.
And what's so interesting, and we can tie this back in a way to American Beauty, because William Holden plays a grown-up. He's like the grown-up guy at the network, one of the grown-up guys at the network. And he's married to this grown-up woman, Beatrice Straight, who got an Academy Award as this Best Supporting Actress for 5 minutes of screen time, basically. And I'm not saying that was wrong, because she was quite good. Anyway, what he does when he meets and falls in love with Faye Dunaway is that he also is doing something in his life of reclaiming his youth, or going backwards in a way, because he's got this really solid marriage of like 30 years or something like that. So his character is really interesting because he is the grown-up voice. He's the one who's trying to save his friend Peter Finch. He's the one with the voice of reason at the network. And then he gets, just like everybody else, he gets mesmerized and hypnotized by Faye Dunaway's character.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you something else about this film that is unusual about almost any movie about show business, is it gets the show business right.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the story conferences, when you're in there hearing them talk about the ratings, for most viewers, it makes no sense. And Patty Chayefsky knew that. But for people who are inside the industry, it's absolutely accurate. The way they're talking about numbers and affiliates and cost per thousands. And we realize we don't have to really understand it. It's the exact opposite for me of what they did in American Beauty with real estate, or to go a little bit further, to what they do with Asians when they put Asians in movies. I don't want to see Asian actors on TV shows and movies, because it's always really painfully wrong. Except for Charlie Chan. Charlie Chan was great.
And wasn't played by an Asian.
Exactly.
And that's so interesting. That's for another podcast.
Yeah.
I think
I want to hear more about your thoughts about Network.
When the first time I saw it, I had this thought in my head where I was watching it and thinking like, okay, like this is pretty cool. And then, because I've seen clips of the movie, I've seen clips before where it was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then the whole time I thought, this could be made today. This easily could translate. And at the time I saw it was 2013. And now it's gonna be 20 years. It's been 40 years since the film came out.
Right.
And wow. And I love the narration. I loved where it was going. I loved the idea of Alice in Wonderland, where it was you're digging deep down the rabbit hole and you start finding the greatest, to me, one of my favorite scenes in film ever was the scene in the boardroom, where he was giving the monologue of like, there is no such thing as America or Russia. There's only IBM and ABC and Exxon, and it was it frightened me. Like like I shivered a little bit like watching that, and then, believe it or not, and like I because it was one of those real things of like the power of the almighty dollar, and it made me really reconsider what I thought about what screenwriting is. That was the film that I saw that and I thought, I am crap and I need to do way, way, way better than I think I am.
That's interesting. It inspired you.
It really did.
In talking about Holden's obsession, because it was like an obsession. You can't even say it's almost a love affair with Faye Dunaway, because she was always like, her mind was always going, even when they were in bed together.
Ratings.
I'm sorry?
About ratings
About
and
ratings,
scheduling.
and he was just focused on her. And I think that he fell in love and obsession with a woman who had like this drive and purpose.
Yeah.
And while he loved his wife, who was the mother of his children and someone he met and married when he was young, it's that she was settled into this housewife role. And so as he was getting older and he saw his friend going crazy, right? I think that what Faye Dunaway represented was to him was this life force that he felt was like being drained out of him.
Yeah.
And so she was symbolized that he was hanging on to her for like dear life in a way, because when you look at it, they didn't make sense. They really didn't make sense.
I think it was a lot of that movie had to do with not just the concept of, it's about television. So what's reality and what's portrayed on TV, and like that blurry line of ambiguity. And I think that film to me was super, and I think this with carnal knowledge in a way, but less about that movie and more about the network, this was a pioneer in the idea of morally ambiguous characters being a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure if that would be considered a major pioneer. But I thought when I watched it, I didn't love any of the characters. I didn't hate any of the characters. I was just in awe and watching them, because I felt something that when I watched everybody do something, it made me think. It made me feel in ways that and it made me really understand what the idea of being a hypocrite is.
Yes, and they were also in a world where they were players, where what was going on was so much bigger than them, and they also found out that they were replaceable.
Yeah,
I mean
I'm a man without a corporation.
Yeah.
Right.
Robert Duvall's line.
Absolutely.
They were all
even
cogs,
though they were all really important in the moment, you always knew and got the sense, yes, this one can be plucked out and someone else can be put in their place, because what's going on is much larger than them. The film stands up today because for many, many reasons, the performances, the least of which are the performances.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Finch got a posthumous Oscar. He died way too soon, unfortunately. Yeah. And William Holden is one of my favorites, because he's like the quintessential American. That
still to me is like one of the, when I look at that Academy Awards of 1977, even though I don't hold the Academy Awards any weight whatsoever, I just think it's really funny looking at that year of film, 1976. Yes. You're like, oh my God. Like you no matter who you picked for anything, I felt so bad. Like I felt that was the only time I would feel sympathy for the Academy, where no matter what pick you made, you would have been wrong. Like you can't do anything about it.
Absolutely. And I hold Academy Awards in high esteem when they're right, according to me.
Yeah.
When Kevin Spacey won for Usual Suspects, I had said to my sons when we walked out, he's going to get nominated. And when he won, I leapt out of my seat because I was so happy. And in that moment, I had such respect for the Academy.
He did win for American Beauty too, I think.
I don't think so.
I can't
remember. He did.
I think he did.
Did he?
I think he did.
That movie swept the awards. It got Best Picture, cinematography,
we must have our researcher
director.
look that up. Our researcher's looking that up right now.
I think the 5 that I got, it was cinematography, directing, Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role, and
director.
Yeah, I got director, and I forgot the 5th one. There was a 5th thing, and maybe visual effects. I'm not sure, but like that scene, like going back to that scene of the flowers and everything, like, and the thing that changed my perspective on that movie too is whenever you find out, I forgot her name, the actress's name,
Mina Severi.
Yeah. Whenever she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've never done this before. I'm a virgin."
Yeah, he won Best Actor. You're right. Yeah.
And when she says, "I'm a virgin," that was the shifting point of the entire movie, where his
That's when he grew up. That's when he came back to being an adult. That's when he grew up.
Yeah.
When he said, "This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong."
And also the idea that this image that I was aspiring to is a lie. Because it's how, and the imagery of red in the whole movie. Like I thought the movie visually was fantastic. Personally, I was paying attention to every single frame, every single time, because I was looking for some things that I didn't think I needed to be looking for, and I found it. With the network, it was more about listening to what they were saying, and I was trying really hard to understand where they were coming from, because like like the jargon was pretty like weird. Like I didn't understand how ratings worked at the time. I was just like, okay, like whatever. But then as it was going on, I was like, I got that. It hit me like a truck where I realized that all of these things make sense and they apply to what's going on. And that's just such good screenwriting. Just how every single thing in there was interwoven. Everything was tied up. There was no thing that you could have said, oh, if you took that out, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Pat, talk about dying too young. I mean, Patty Chayefsky died a couple of years later, and he wrote another one of my favorites, which is Hospital, with George C. Scott and Diana Rigg, which is verges a little on the pretentious occasionally, but for me, and we will have a podcast talking about our favorite actors or the ones that we can't not watch on screen, no matter what they're in. It's George C. Scott. I mean, he's mesmerizing. And one of the things about American Beauty where I'm prejudiced is I just love Kevin Spacey so much. I could watch him all day long. Anytime he's on TV in a commercial, I stop and watch it because I just love to watch his command, his presence.
Look at what else Patty Chayefsky wrote, though. Look at he was one of the pioneers on television. He wrote the original Marty, and so he was this great humanitarian in his writing, and at the same time could write something that was so cold. So that depth of writing talent that used to be there. I mean, I think we're in a golden age right now.
Yes, and it's in movies, yes, but it's also on television. We are in the third golden age of television.
I think speaking of, speaking of which, I could represent. I thought I watched Masters of None, Aziz Ansari show, and I want to know if you've seen it, and
I haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it.
Watch it because I want to know what your opinion is, Dan, on that, about how Asian Americans are portrayed in the movie. Because I thought from the outside perspective looking in, it was pretty funny and pretty accurate because it was written by an actual Asian dude.
Now, so we consider Indians Asians?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's news to me. So I learned something.
Well, no, because there
are Asian characters in it.
Yeah. It was the two main characters, the two writers are Aziz Ansari, who's the main character. He's like the guy we follow, and I forgot the other guy's name, but he's Chinese, I think. Yeah. And they're both writers, and I could be totally wrong. If anybody corrects me, that's totally fine. I'm not that thing on that, but that's. Watching that show, it was a really fresh look on good writing, one, and two, on real character struggles of with ethnicity in the 21st century.
Well, Garen, you brought up something that's really interesting when you asked Dan and me if we'd seen it. I know we've both heard of it, and it's on my list, is that I often say to my friends, half jokingly, if I didn't sleep, I could see everything. Because there are so many great movies out there. There's so many incredible things in all aspects of television, including Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, that, I need to live to 150 or something so I can see all of it. Right now I'm making my way through the fourth season of House of Cards. And I have a list of things that I hope to get to at some point. Plus I'm working, earning a living. So I just need to clone myself or something, or I don't know. But it's a embarrassment of riches. That's how I pose it. So we've talked about a bunch of films. Speaking of television, what else are you watching on TV now?
Right now, I'm a huge fan of cartoons. I really, really love cartoons. If my dream job would be if I had any skill in animation, and that would be to create a show and get it on the air.
You could create one. You could write the story. You could create the characters and have a partner who drew.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to bump into someone one day.
Yeah. Like so do you watch? What's the channel? What's that channel? The cartoon. There's a bunch of cartoons.
Yeah, I watch the Cartoon Network a lot.
Adult Swim.
Adult Swim is my one of my.
Do you watch Archer?
My favorite network. I love Archer.
Yeah.
I love Archer. Like the shows that I love. Like right now, my favorite cartoon on the air right now is a show called Regular Show. And it's this little the moniker of it is Regular Show, Anything But. And it's about these two 23-year-old high school and college dropouts who work as groundskeepers at a park. The only twist is that they're both one of them is a raccoon and the other one's a blue jay. And all the other main characters are like weird hodgepodge of people that are just doing regular stuff. Like one's a Yeti, the other one's a gumball machine, the other one's a lollipop.
Oh, that's so interesting.
The other one's a green man, the other one's a ghost. And and it's just these group of friends, and that show brought on to me a huge comeback and a revolution to Cartoon Network's slump of lack of originality, in my opinion. And watching that is just about real people and real, like, and it's about young guys, and like I related to a lot of things. That show as a cartoon helped me get through so much of high school.
That is so interesting. I wanted to, I love it when people love cartoons, because I think that a lot of people put them down. And I think that there's also the golden age of cartooning right now with all the outlets there are for them.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you was, speaking to students who are, in their first or second year of community college or four-year college, and they're interested in film, do you have any advice for them, how to immerse themselves in it, what to do to get the best out of their education?
It's interesting. I mean, I can, but I can't. The thing is, the obvious answer would be just go and do it. And in the way that find something you like. If you think you have like something remotely interested in film, just keep watching stuff and find what you like and find your niche and find what you think you're good at. And then just stick with that and keep going. The way I found out was just because I always knew that I wanted to do something like that, and I didn't know how to go about it. It wasn't until I took dance class in college that I was like, I could do this. Like, this is a career. I could really do this. This isn't just something I could like do on the side while I'm like getting my architecture degree. That was what I was mainly planning on doing beforehand. And
I would also say to anybody who's considering studying film, looking for a career in film, or just even exploring it, is writers to take. If you're writing, take an acting class. If you're an actor, take a writing class. Take production classes. Become a PA on all the work on the student films. Volunteer for that. Audition for them. Immerse yourself in the whole process, because whatever you choose to do in the end, and even if you go do something else, you've learned so much about how things work, and that if you want to be a part of it, understanding and respecting other people's roles and what they do is so very, very important. Let me ask you, what are your career ambitions once you get your degree? Do you know yet, or you still exploring?
The thing is, my dream goal, like what I would like to do, just because of who I am as a person, would just make a living screenwriting, like writing scripts and selling scripts, because
I think I know you do, but I also think Dan made a very good point that you'd be an excellent production executive, because by the time you would get to that, you have such a background and you've immersed yourselves in film. And
I've always wanted to do that as a thing. Like, I've always wanted to make, because a couple of my friends and I, who I grew up with and that are also Armenian like me, like, and that was a huge thing. Also, being an Armenian kid in the community, trying to be a creative, which is funny that it's not as common as it should be. But we grew up thinking like we can make such good stuff, and we thought about with production companies and making things like that. And I've always wanted, and no matter what, and I love writing just because of the work ethic of it, or like the working in my room and like not having to go outside and just watch movies and like kind of get inspired. But and as being young right now and wanting to do stuff consistently, I've thought about doing that, like, and helping people make things, and like that's
absolutely.
Something I really
that
enjoy.
one of my nicknames for you is King of the Armenians, and I think that mining your own culture and telling interesting stories that other people can relate to, that would be awesome. I think, Garen, that no matter what you do, you will be successful, because you have drive, you have ambition, and you have great intelligence. And I can also see you behind a desk with a secretary saying, get me so-and-so on the phone and set up this meeting, and also writing in your spare time, because you could be a writer-producer. And that, I think, would be awesome. But, it's all wide open to you. And I want to thank you so much for being here. And Dan, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, I want Garen to come back.
Yes.
Maybe not next week, but at some point, because what I think Saran and I are going to do is we're going to put you through the torture mill, and we're going to have you talk about some of the projects you're working on.
Yes, I would love that.
Maybe we'll have even a story conference.
Yeah, I would love to come back.
Yes,
that would be
talk
very
about
cool.
what you're doing.
I think that'll be very good for students. But yeah, last word of advice: if you're thinking about take classes, find out what you like, stick to it. Don't let anybody tell you not to do it. And if you're that kind of person that takes a lot of criticism and still keeps going, you're my hero immediately. So keep doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Garen. Thank you, Dan.
And we will see you next week. Thank you, Saran.
Absolutely. Signing off.